So the latest esoteric discussion I had was surrounding ties, because a bunch of people, for the first time in Star Wars, encountered a bunch of people intentionally drawing into the top 8, and then they bubbled out. And it sounds bad until you realize that all of the other options are worse. And it just comes down to, what are you trying? Every system is going to have flaws, because they all encourage and discourage different things. And it's the same thing with ELO or any other ranking system, any ladder system, any tournament system, any whatever. What are the behaviors you want to encourage, and what are the behaviors you want to discourage? And then that will drive how the event, the thing, is structured. And the problem is that in the case of ties, every time somebody tries to correct for ties, they end up causing greater problems, and the cure is worse than the poison or the disease, whatever you want to look at it. I'm fine with people drawing in, since they had to win big to get there in order to draw in. They were already in. So yes and no. The argument here was, mathematically, if you are at the lower end, like you just barely crept into the next level of Swiss, the next tier where you required another round, you end up in this position where more people can draw in than normal. Now, it's not like the whole top 8, but there's more games that are able to draw. And similarly, you have scenarios where people insist on running too many Swiss rounds for some reason, and then you end up with like tons of people able to draw because they don't need to. It's like a runner going into a sprint before passing the tape. The lead is enough that it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're at the appropriate levels, population levels, which is something that people don't discuss, and I'm going to do a short on this. Maybe I'll just take all of this, but like, part of the solution is more people playing, or less, technically. But if you have more people involved, you're like about to graduate into the next tier, then that means you are able to minimize the amount of people that can quote unquote safely draw into top 8, thereby forcing people to play it out, which is the big complaint. Is like, well, my game didn't matter. And spoiler alert, your game probably didn't matter anyway, because you were going to be cooked. Also, that was a lost spider for no reason. Good heads up play by bad guy, but the thing is that SWU tried it, and other games have done this, where you have a double loss, and it's idiotic, because it doesn't solve any of the problems with slow play. All it does is remove the IDs, because obviously nobody's going to ID. This is also not good by bad guy, so maybe this is a big bait from Dear H. If you think IDs are the ultimate evil, intentional draws, then you can remove the intentional draws by doing that, but it introduces other behavioral problems. It encourages other bad behavior, and you can game theory this out. It either does nothing to help, like slow play, or it actively encourages people being spiteful. And it does nothing for people who are acting maliciously, who are intentionally trying to manipulate the system. So the bottom line is, it all comes down to, what do you actually want to do? How do you actually want to encourage and discourage certain behaviors in your game? And I try to look at this from a objective standpoint, because I played games going over 30 years now that have had intentional draws. I played chess before card games, and it's like, that was always a thing. Now, chess is a different game, closer to phobies. But when it comes to card games, like, this is something that's second nature to me. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm not like, well, the way we've done it was the best, and that's why we've always done it, so therefore we should always do it. That's not the right way to think about it. But I don't believe that removing these things enables anything better, healthier, or more interesting. Because you do have to account for the scenario. What happens if people do draw? And you logistically cannot have enough judges to watch every freaking table to be like, well, they're slow playing and they're not. We have judges that are missing obvious things. Like, people are playing, and this is Not like, oh my God, there's rampant cheating. It's just like people make mistakes. It's long events. It's a complicated game. You're tired. Somebody tapped the incorrect amount of resources, let's say. And judges are not catching that because maybe the judges are tired or whatever the excuse is. But realistically, if the judges are not catching something as quote unquote obvious as this costs 5, you paid 4, then how are we expecting them to properly assess whether someone is slow playing? Let alone monitor multiple games that are potentially slow playing, when in all likelihood, the average is 1 judge per 30 or 40 players. It's just logistically not possible. And that goes for basically all levels except for the smallest of small locals, in which case, who cares? You resolve that almost internally. So if we assume all of these things, we are still in the position of we're trying to solve a problem, or we have a solution that's in search of a problem, or we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. If your game didn't matter because of someone else drawing, that means you had to win and a specific other player to lose. I mean, that's also part of it. I mean, there is a world where the simple answer is you don't like drawing, then win all your games. If you were XO going into that final round, you could say, I don't want to draw and play it out. And guess what? You're going to top 8 anyway. Or top whatever, because you were undefeated. So, just win? Which I don't love that counter argument, because if there is a legitimate problem, just we'll just win solution isn't necessarily going to resolve it. But in this case, I don't think there's a legitimate problem. It's like, it's fine. And I don't want to lean into, well, we've all bubbled out once, so who cares? It happens to all of us. Happens to the best of us. Because it's true. That does happen. That doesn't make it sting any less. However, people are going to always bubble out. There will it is the rarity that you have a clean cut. And tiebreakers, to some degree, are always going to play in. Even if you get rid of draws and you go back to double losses or hypothetical other option, you will still end up in a scenario where people will bubble out based on the math of how Swiss works. The other argument is just don't do a top cut then. But that doesn't solve the drawing thing, because people will then draw to make sure they are at least a minimum level of whatever threshold they want to hit. Good Akira poll here. Being on the bubble is only being on the bubble if drawing doesn't remove you from it. If drawing prevents you from getting in, you aren't getting in mathematically based on the rules. I feel like I'm getting confused trying to parse what you're saying. I feel like we're agreeing, but I also feel like I'm missing something here. I guess where you're going with this is kind of what I'm saying, that a lot of the people that feel that they bubbled out probably had the illusion that they were going to make it, but mathematically they were never realistically going to make it. And it's difficult to speak in absolutes because the math and breakers are going to be, running the gamut, all ends of positive, negative, and in between. And it's going to vary based on the tournament size and other factors. The issue is, it is simply a math problem. It's a math equation that you have to sit down and figure out. And at a certain point, you have to accept that there are going to be things that fall through the cracks because we're going with the system. What's the alternative? We're going to go to double a limb and then events never end? Like, that would be insane. It's one of those things that I sympathize because I bubbled out at 9th. One of my teammates bubbled out at 9th at Worlds for Transformers. The other guy, one of the other teammates went on to win the whole thing, but you get the idea. It happens, unfortunately. I don't think draws are the issue. People feel cheated for some reason. And I understand why it's frustrating, but if we're going to do a cut, if we're going to do placings, and we're not going to just do a massive round robin to have everybody play everyone in the event, and then we go, well, who's the best? Because they played everyone, and who has the most wins or something. And we logistically just cannot do that. Let's accept the reality. What are we supposed to do? I would love to hear what the alternative is, because I'm confident that there isn't going to be a better solution proposed.